pleasant good morning to the members of our press and our viewers. Welcome to the PNCR's press conference for February 2nd, 2022. I'll take this time as we are about to celebrate tomorrow to wish our media personnel and our viewers a happy 52nd Republic Day, On our panel today, I have three members, which I will introduce. From my right, with me, is our chairman of the party, Mr. Sherwin Holder, followed by Member of Parliament, Ms. Natasha Singh Lewis, and to her right, we have retired Rear Admiral Gary Beth. Now, as is customary, the statement will be read. It will be done in three parts today, after which you will be allowed to ask questions by the raise of hands. We will start off with the questions pertaining to the statement, and I will indicate when we will begin taking questions for the open segment.
Good morning, members of the media. Good morning, members of the media and your viewing audience. I will be reading the first part of today's press statement. The PNCR will not relent in its effort to get the police force to address complaints from citizens about abuse of power by some of its ranks. At our press conference on Tuesday, 8 February, we informed the nation of the numerous complaints the party has been receiving from citizens about the abuse of power, discrimination, and victimization by some ranks of the Guyana police force across the country. To this end, you will recall we wrote the Commissioner of Police requesting a meeting to discuss this crisis. We are aware that on many occasions, police ranks are taking instructions from the PPP and are abusing their power. We expect the Commissioner will ensure that a requested meeting is convened so that the issue can be dealt with in the interests of justice for all our citizens. Notwithstanding the GPF seeming inability or unwillingness to address this critical matter, our party will not allow it to slip below the radar. The PNCR wishes to advise Guyanese to bring to our attention cases where elements in the Guyana police force are abusing their power and incarcerating them illegally. The PNCR will be helping citizens to take legal action against the GPF and those of its elements who abuse their rights in a manner that victimizes the poor and the powerless. We intend to relentlessly pursue it until the Commissioner of Police engages in serious and genuine efforts to fix this problem. To this end, a motion was prepared and will be submitted to the National Assembly.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To preserve public respect for the National Assembly, recent negative trends must be reversed. Our recent parliamentary sessions, we have noted trends that, if not arrested and reversed, will diminish public respect for and the prestige of our National Assembly. The performance of the Speaker of the House has reached a crisis point in terms of his blatant bias and subservience to the government. At his January 8th press conference, leader of the PNCR, Comrade Aubrey Norton, had cause to remark that the Speaker has been and continues to be complicit in making the National Assembly a tool of oppression. and noted further that he, the Speaker, is incapable of managing the affairs of the National Assembly in a fair and transparent manner. Since then, the Speaker has shown no signs of self-reflection, self-correction, or remorse. The evidence suggests that he has gotten worse. We believe that the increasing number of calls from citizens and civil society organizations for Minister Nigel Darmlal to be removed from office is appropriate and justified. His insult to a female member of parliament in the National Assembly, compounded by his so-called apology, has severely damaged the social contract and the conduct Guyanese are willing to accept from a government minister and public official. To overlook Minister Darmlal's violation without appropriate sanction runs the clear risk of normalizing the crude and misogynistic behavior that our society is struggling to discourage. To send the right message to our young men, Nigel Darmlal must go. Thank you.
Members of the media, the PNCR calls on the government to explore other viable options to utilize our natural gas resources. The PNCR has noted with concern a statement last week by the government's gas-to-shore project lead, Winston Brassington, that the completion of the commercial agreements and the construction of the gas pipeline will begin by the fourth quarter of 2022. From this announcement, it is clear that the government intends to stubbornly forge ahead, ignoring the several red flags raised by independent analysts and technical experts on the project's costs, design, and viability. Guyanese have suffered the consequences of such PPP recklessness before, losing billions of dollars in such monumental fiascos as the Skeldon Sugar Factory, the fiber optic cable project, and currently the packaging plant at Enmore. The PPP has consistently wasted taxpayers' money on ill-conceived projects that facilitate PPP corruption but deliver no real benefits to the people of Guyana. In our own consultations with experts, the PNCR is convinced that there exist more viable and less costly options in utilizing Guyana's natural gas resources. In particular, the use of ISO containers to ferry liquefied natural gas to shore is a much less expensive and more environmentally friendly transportation method. We are advised that LNG ISO tank containers are seen in the industry as the easiest and most flexible means of conveyance to transport gases. Apart from the massive cost savings relative to gas pipelines, the LNG tank container option would allow the country to export excess gas to several overseas markets. Clearly, this is a better option since such export is not possible in the pipeline project. The nation has regrettably witnessed government's stubborn attitude to depart from parliamentary norms and by itself determine the future of the nation's oil and gas resources, as exemplified by their recent ignoring of the parliamentary opposition in passing a new natural resource fund legislation. This is a patent violation of the Constitution, which is based on the philosophy of inclusive governance. It breaches Article 13 and other provisions of the Constitution. The PNCR therefore calls upon the government to immediately consult, discuss, and relook at the pipeline proposal in the light of the existence of a superior method of utilizing our nation's huge natural gas resources. The potential large cost savings can be used to lift the living standards of the many poor and struggling families in our midst. It is not too late for the government to listen. The nation is watching. We thank you.
Thank you to the panel. Now we'll open the floor for questions. I will ask that you show by raise of hands. Please indicate your media house and provide us with your name. Mr. Shabral.
Good day. We're Admiral Mr. Day, Dennis Shabral, General Relations Stock Radio. Sir, you referred to which of the Constitution as regards non-compliance with Article 13. Can you say what plans are there to challenge this in the courts, seeking to decide if this is a clear violation of the Constitution?
Thanks for your question, Dennis. There are plans, as we've indicated on several occasions, to move beyond rhetoric and to exercise other political actions, including possible court actions on the issue of violations of the Constitution. So the party intends to look at these issues carefully and to consult our vast array of attorneys to determine the best way forward. But beyond that, Dennis, I should say that there is an expectation based on the provisions of the Constitution and the philosophy behind the Constitution that a government will not intentionally violate it. And we've been down this road before. We have met with the PPP during past administrations, and we have discussed this issue. So it beholds the PPP to understand that it is in the best interest of governance and government for it to follow the Constitution. It is in the best interest of governance and government for the PPP to lift the standard of democracy in Guyana, also by following the Constitution. So outside of the court and court action, we believe that the international community that wrote favorably on many issues in Guyana should also take part in this process to bring the PPP to understand that no matter how you are responsible directly for government, you alone cannot govern, and you alone do not represent government. So that would be my answer to you, to this question at this point in time.
Do you have a time frame within which we can actually see court papers being filed?
But Dennis, as I said, it's a multiple of platforms we'll be using to deal with this issue, because we talk about Article 13, where there are many other instances of constitutional violation. So I cannot give you a timeline as to when court papers will be filed, but what I can say to you is the PNCR is solid and certain about political action, legal action, extra-constitutional action, and diplomatic action that it will take in relation to this matter of the patent violations of our Constitution.
Madam Moderator, if you allow me a quick separate question on a separate topic.
Go ahead.
Could you provide us with some details about the viability of using the IS containers instead to transport the gas? What financial or technical details do you have to support your argument?
Thanks for that again, Dennis. I don't think this is the forum to provide technical details. What I can say to you that we do have our experts and we're willing to sit and discuss those details with the government. Secondly, there are a number of institutions and organizations that also have information in relation to not only oil and gas and natural resource, but many issues that afflict the nation. So it is important for the PPP to utilize the democratic mechanisms within the Constitution, within the Parliament. There's a parliamentary sectoral committee on the natural resource. Therefore, we call on the government to use that committee, bring the public and other experts to give evidence and information concerning the oil and gas, natural resource, and also a pipeline. So beyond simply having Mr. Brassington issue a statement on this issue and running independently on this issue, there was a parliamentary sectoral committee on natural resource chaired by the government and chaired by the opposition on a rotation basis. And we believe this is an ample time for that committee to be stood up, that committee to invite submissions and discussions and recommendations on this project, separate and apart, and including the PNCR's proposals.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Harris. Mr. Adam Harris, I see your hands raised.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute and disconnected. Good morning, all. This is for Member of Parliament Natasha Singh Lewis. Once more, we are hearing about the bias of the speaker. I remember Opposition Leader Joseph Harman having a meeting with the speaker, and it seems as though nothing is going to change. What else can the opposition in Parliament do to bring about a change? Because obviously, these set of approaches seem not to be working.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Harris. Very important question. I would like to remind all of us that when we recognize this, we filed a motion in the National Assembly, a motion of no confidence, and so we started a couple of months back taking action. We filed a no confidence motion in the Speaker of the National Assembly. He has reported that he is seeking advice on that motion. What advice he's seeking or from whom he's seeking advice, I know that he would have sent that motion to the Attorney General Chambers for advice on that, to proceed with that motion. What we can do in the National Assembly at this time is to continue to seek his protection, to continue to agitate for change in behavior. We can only ask in and out of the Assembly for the Speaker to be fair and just, as he ought to be.
Thank you, Ms. Natasha. Mr. Shabral, is your hand up to ask another question, or was it just left that way?
Yes, I would like to ask the Admiral Best once again, if at the very basic level he can provide some more information about the containerized process, about the viability of ISO containerized process for the transport of the gas, in order to convince the public that the method that he's floating is the better one. And secondly, have you formally requested a meeting of the Natural Resources Committee to discuss the gas pipeline project?
I'll deal with the second one, Dennis. The Parliamentary Sectorial Committee on Natural Resources is currently be chaired by you're handing over, right? Okay, yes. It's currently being chaired by the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources at the moment. Now, this committee has a constitutional role and constitutional function. So your question whether we have asked for a meeting really is not the question that should be asked. What you should be asking, or what we should be saying, is why is it the Parliamentary Sectorial Committee on Natural Resources has not scheduled meetings on this particular issue, on all the other issues that deal with natural resources, not only oil and gas. Not only oil and gas. We have mining, we have other areas within the natural resource sector. So I think that is what really is the issue. Why the committee is not functioning the way it ought to be functioning within Parliament. And that matter was raised in Parliament before. On the second issue, as I said before, I don't think this is a forum for details on the ISO containers, but just to essentially say, instead of piping the gas, using a pipelines that is laid on the seabed to shore, the gas is moved to a ship, a containerized ship built specifically for this purpose, and then it comes to shore. And therefore, you create what we call a virtual pipeline. From just like a container leaves the ship and goes on a truck that is built for a container, then the container comes off the ship and goes on a truck that is built for that purpose, and it can go to the power plant. Additionally, one can export the gas easier from a ship, as opposed to trying to export it from the pipeline when it would have landed at a designated location. So that's what I would say on that, and any further technical details will come out in due course when the parties, experts, meet with the government to discuss this alternative option, which we believe is a superior option to what is on the table now by Mr. Brassington.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shabal.
If you can bear me out, though, I know you're saying that the committee is not functioning the way that it ought to. But in an effort to jumpstart the process in the way that you would like to see jumpstarted, why not ask the meeting rather than wait for doctor to say that you'll meet or they will never meet?
Well, no, that is very fair, Dennis, and I'm not saying that we have no intention of asking the committee to meet. What I did say is that requests have been made for these committees to meet. That's what I do. Requests have been made for the committees to meet.
Thank you.
Come on, Dennis. I can't tell you specifically when last it was made. I cannot tell you specifically, Dennis, when last it was made. But they were made.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on the press statement?
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
From Mr. Holder, yes, sir. Mr. Holder, at the previous press conference, we talked about the police abuse of power. And today you said that there have been reports coming from various parts of the country. Could you be a bit more specific? Like, we had 2 reports from Bushland. We had one from Ghana, that kind of thing. Could you provide that kind of information, sir?
Okay, thank you, Adam. I could give you some specific areas. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
A few weeks ago, I think to be exact, 2 weeks ago, I was in Bartica, and I've personally received over a dozen reports of police abuse of power, detaining persons without reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. We've also received complaints from Linden and other areas across the country of similar instances of police abuse. You would notice recently that a number of persons have been threatening to take legal action against the police. And so the PNCR is committed also to assisting persons via our legal teams to take the necessary action when there's an occurrence of this nature, with the police abusing their authority.
Okay, sir. Have any cases been filed? Has there been an approach to the court or to any legal authority since we last spoke at the press conference and since you received these reports? Has anybody started an action?
We have been offering internally legal advice where we can give it. We have been offering legal advice to several victims of abuse by the police. I can't say that anything has been filed in the courts, but it's a work in progress. And as you know, we've requested a meeting with the Commissioner of Police. That has not yet been materialized, but we will continue to press to ensure that we meet with the Commissioner of Police and that he addresses these matters urgently.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Anybody else have any other questions on the press statement? Oh. Mr. Sherbal?
No, thanks, I'm good.
Okay. So I will go ahead and take questions outside of the press statement now.
Perhaps I can be the devil's advocate here. A few weeks ago, party member Simone Brooms indicated that she was quitting. Has there been a formal letter to the party? And has the party reached out to her for discussion on her likely course of action?
Thank you for that question, Adam. Yes, we have received a formal letter from Comrade Brooms. We're dealing with that. That's an internal matter, and we wouldn't want to put too much out there on it, but we did receive a formal letter from Comrade Brooms.
there been any similar action from any other high-level member of the party?
No, not as party chairman, not that I'm aware of. Since our ascension to office, the leader has taken an approach of inclusiveness. We've been reaching out to those persons that have moved away from the party for some time. We've been reaching across the aisle to persons who would have been on different teams during the Congress. So that's the general approach that we have been taking. So I'm not aware that there are any others, any other high-profile persons that would have resigned.
Any other questions?
Yes, beyond being an ordinary member in the National Assembly, what plans are there to involve Mr. Joseph Harmon more in the work of the party?
Thank you. Is it from Dennis?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis, the PNCR treats all its members equally. Mr. Harmon, having hold a senior position within the PNCR and within government, he obviously has a role to play, but that is something that we're discussing internally. As I said before, the leader has been reaching out to persons that would have campaigned on different teams throughout the Congress, and Mr. Harmon would not be excluded. We have been reaching out to him and others, and we expect that he will play some role within at the parliamentary level, of course, also. He's still a parliamentarian, so as far as that goes, he has a role to play.
No plans to recall him?
We don't have any plans at this time to recall any member of parliament. I'm not aware that we have any plans to recall any member of parliament. We would have met with our members of parliament just recently and had fruitful discussions on the way forward. And so we're looking to work as a team at the parliamentary level.
Mr. Benchcock, I see your hand is up.
Yes, good morning. Thanks. I have two questions. In fact, the chairman mentioned that the team of legal persons within the PNCR coalition are in touch with persons who have had serious problems with the police. And the chairman mentioned that they're just advising. One would have thought that legal action would have already been brought against the police for these sort of serious infractions. Anytime soon that you guys may advise the victims that legal actions are necessary in this process. And secondly, the police commissioner has refused to meet with senior members of the opposition for over a year now. Are you guys going to still sit and wait for the individual who's acting in that capacity to still meet? And are you guys holding your breath on that? The third question I have is directed on the subject of Sue. Everything seemed to have gone silent on the matter, the serious matter concerning allegations made by Mr. Sue that the bribes were paid to Mr. Barajak Dale. This is directed to Mr. Best. I'm not sure if Mr. Best is still a resident in the compound of Brandonville too. And if so, since Jack Dale said that Sue is a tenant of him out there in Brandonville too, whether Mr. Best is familiar of who Mr. Sue is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. To answer your first question on legal action with regards to the police, this is still a work in progress. I didn't say that we're only advising. We're advising, and also there is an intent to take legal action, but that would depend on the victim themselves. The victim would have a bearing also on that. And Mark, you need to understand that we're a relatively new body. The new leadership of the PNCR is relatively new. And as it relates to the legal committee, that's still a work in progress. We're still recruiting, we're still discussing, we're still planning. So I understand the urgency, and we would be pushing with it. We have been meeting out to persons that have been abused. We've been in contact with them. In some areas, our advice would have borne fruit in that regard. So we're working on it. We expect that in the very shortly, you would see some legal actions being taken. In the press conference, we said that we will be assisting those victims. And so, again, it would depend on the victim themselves. Sometimes persons, you begin that process, and then when you get somewhere with it, as you progress, then you might have victims, for whatever reason, might not want to continue, or they might want to discontinue such actions, legal actions, for different reasons, out of fear, for various reasons. So it's a work in progress, but what I'm trying to say is that the PNCR will remain on the side of those victims, and we will give the necessary support and assistance that is needed. In terms of the meeting with the commissioner, again, this is a new leadership in the PNCR. I cannot account for what would have obtained in the past. I know that we have written the Commissioner of Police, and so the general expectation is that in a short period of time, he will respond, and we will meet. That is the general expectation. On the sidelines of that, we will be looking to take legal action. We've said that the option through Parliament, we're looking at putting a motion at the parliamentary level. So there are a number of options that are available, but we expect that the Commissioner of Police will treat this as a matter of urgency, and he will meet with us shortly.
Thank you, Mark. The answer to your question is that I don't know who Mr. Sue is. That's the question you asked me. I don't know who Mr. Sue is. As you're aware, I'm at 180. I live at 180 Sparendam, East Coast Demerara. They call that area where I live, Praderville 2. But I don't know who Mr. Sue is. I have no idea. So that's the answer to, that's my answer to your question. I don't know who he is. I think the party has spoken on the issue. The leader of the party has spoken and called on the Ghana Police Force to do an investigation. So that's what came out of the party, and we'll continue to aggressively pursue that option of an investigations to be done into anything, all the allegations that are being made. So that has been the party position. I don't think, and I know it has not changed, but I don't know who Mr. Sue is, Mark.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, please. And this is directed to Mr. Best, who happens to be an attorney and is a senior member of the PNCR. I know the chairman has said that it's relatively new leadership. I can understand that and respect that. However, it doesn't mean that actions cannot be taken. But with regards to Sue's allegations, one would have thought that maybe the legal team would have thought it best to get what Mr. Sue said, allegedly, to the reporter, and take that as part of the start of the investigations through Sue, or maybe the hierarchy of the police force, instead of waiting for the police force to act. We know that they're not going to act. Have you guys decided to take proactive action against the allegations made leveled by Mr. Sue to Mr. Javier?
Well, Mark, again, I think it's, and yes, I am an attorney, but the matter is in the public domain. The matter is in the domain of the Ghana Police Force. and we are calling again the police force to act. We cannot do an independent investigation into the matter. We're talking to our attorneys, people who are part of the PNC family, and they're speaking on different issues and different aspects of this matter. But we cannot do an independent investigation, and the parties put out a position there before. And I hear you, Mark, when you're saying, are we going to wait until the commissioner replies? Are we going to wait until the police do something, because the police may not do something? And those are challenging issues. They are challenging issues, and there are various mechanisms you could look at to deal with them. But to spell it out immediately, as I speak to you now, would be, I guess, would be not in the best interest of the party when the matter has been placed within the confines of the Guyana Police Force to deal with this matter as an allegation coming from a gentleman named Mr. Su. So we prefer the police to deal with the matter at this point in time. And if that doesn't happen, then there's a broader role for the civil society. There's a broader role for the guardians of democracy. There's a broader role for the organization called Article 13. There's a broader role for other citizens to come to the fore and bring pressure to deal with this matter. There's a role for the international community, the diplomatic community. We're going to be using all those channels individually and collectively to bring pressure on the PPP administration and the police force, for that matter, to deal with these issues in the public domain.
Thank you, Mr. Benchcock. Anybody else? Any other questions by the members of the media? Well, I guess with no other hands raised, we call this press conference to a close. Thank you again to the media houses for being a part of this press conference. Thank you.